Get the record button going. So we are now recording. So I will give a brief introduction. So for everyone that's been patiently waiting, listening to us make idle chit chat, thank you for joining us and good afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Doug DeCroy and I'm the Executive Director at Western New York Heritage. I think it's probably safe to say that everyone here is aware of the excitement as we were discussing surrounding the season the Buffalo Bills are having thus far. But some of you may not be aware of just how remarkable some aspects of this season are shaping up to be. I know I wasn't. Or for that matter, that the entire history of the Bills franchise is loaded with pioneering people and contributions to the game. So really interesting stuff. And we're fortunate there is probably no one better qualified to share some of these fascinating stories of past and present with us than our presenter for today, which is Greg Tranter, a man who no doubt has forgotten more about Buffalo Bills history than I will ever know. So in addition to being an expert on everything Buffalo Bills, Greg currently serves as the president of the board of managers at the Buffalo History Museum, and he's a highly respected Buffalo sports historian, curator, and collector. His articles have appeared in such publications as Gridiron Greats Magazine, The Coffin Corner, Sports Collectors Digest, Shout, and of course, Western New York Heritage. Plus, he's been sought out by major networks and publications, including the New York Times, ESPN, A&E, and Sports Illustrated for his views on Buffalo Bills history. I would be remiss if I also didn't mention that Greg is the author of Makers, Moments, and Memorabilia, a chronicle of Buffalo professional sports, which was a joint publication project with Western New York Heritage and the Buffalo History Museum last fall. In fact, stay tuned to the end of the program as we'll be offering attendees of today's presentation a special discount on Greg's book, which makes a perfect gift, of course, for yourself or the Buffalo sports fan on your holiday list. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, our plan for today is for me to wrap up this little introduction, and then Greg is going to share his presentation till about 12:45, at which time I will come back in to moderate a question and answer session with him. So I think we all know probably how to use these machines right now, but if you don't, if you move your cursor or whatever happens to be on the device you're using, you're going to see a little Q&A button at the bottom. Simply click on that button at any time during the program to type in your question. And I can answer, as I mentioned earlier, for those who tuned in early, any logistical or mechanical questions as they come in, but otherwise I'll collect the questions and then feed them to Greg at the conclusion of his planned remarks. I would ask that unless you need an immediate answer for something, you don't use the chat option, just click on the Q&A button to interact with questions or comments. As I mentioned to some of the earlier folks, we will be recording this program, and so we'll be sending out a link to the video at its conclusion for all the attendees. And eventually the video will also be viewable on our website at wnyheritage.org. So again, I want to thank everyone for their interest. And without further ado, I will turn the program over to Greg. Let's go Buffalo.
All right, thanks, Doug. And thank you all for attending today. 2020 has been a fun and exciting year in at least one way, and that has been watching the Buffalo Bills play football. The Bills are on the verge of a historic season in many respects, and the Buffalo News has caught some of those highlights, some of which would say surprising victories from this season. Today, as many of you know, the Bills sit atop the AFC East with a 9-3 record and have a chance to win their first AFC East Division title since 1995. Josh Allen has had a breakout season for Buffalo in 2020. And with his excellent performance, he is involved in the league most valuable player discussions. Allen, with his 3,403 passing yards and 33 touchdowns accounted for, is on pace to break team records in both of those categories. Drew Bledsoe holds the team passing record with 4,359 yards that was set in 2002. And Jim Kelly holds the single season record for touchdowns accounted for with 34 in 1991. We feature here Josh's cereal that was released this fall and can still be purchased at grocery stores around Western New York, and the December issue of Beckett Football Monthly, promoting an arms race among the young quarterbacks in pro football, and the rising value of Josh's rookie cards. Allen also this week became the first Bills player in team history to win the AFC Player of the Week 3 times in one season. He's also the first Bills player to pass for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in 3 different games in a single season. And he has 6 300-yard passing games, and the Bills are 6-0 in those games. Wide receiver Stefon Diggs. What an acquisition by the Bills. He leads the team with 90 receptions for 1,037 yards in 12 games, and his receptions lead the entire NFL. He is also on pace to shatter the team records held by Eric Moulds for most receptions in 1 year and most yards receiving. But Diggs has been more important than that. He has actually helped raise the level of play of all the receivers around him and has shown great leadership for the Bills. Tyler Bass, the Bills' 6th-round selection in the 2020 draft out of Georgia Southern, got off to a slow start, and many Bills fans were wondering why he was still on the team, as he made only 2 of his first 4 field goals and struggled early in the season. However, he has come along nicely as the season's progressed. He tied a Bills record in their October victory over the Jets by making 6 field goals in a single game, and broke the Bills record by kicking 8 field goal attempts in a single game. In the Bills' 32-30 miracle loss to Arizona on November 15th, Bass became the first player in NFL history to kick 3 field goals of over 50 yards in 1 quarter. He hit from 54, 55, and 58 yards. And he has made 13 of his last 14 field goal attempts. Sean McDermott is in his 4th season as Bills head coach. He is already the 4th winningest coach in Bills history with his 34-26 record. He trails only Marv Levy, Lou Saban, and Chuck Knox in victories. And when the Bills qualify for the playoffs this season, he will become only the 3rd Bills coach to take 3 teams to the playoffs as head coach of the Bills, with Marv Levy and Lou Saban being the other 2. An exciting Bills season for sure, with more history to be written in the coming weeks, and just maybe a return to the Super Bowl in a city that they made their first appearance in 1991 in Tampa, Florida. It would be poetic justice for the Bills to return to Tampa and this time bring home the Super Bowl trophy. The Bills, of course, began in 1959, officially on October 28th, when they joined the American Football League. Ralph Wilson, who was a minority owner of the Detroit Lions, was the owner of the Bills at their founding. He first attempted to put the team in Miami, but was thwarted at being able to use the Orange Bowl. He then chose Buffalo, and he said years later, it was the best decision he ever made. He owned the team for 55 years, and under his leadership, the Bills won 2 AFL championships, 4 AFC championships, are the only team in NFL history to appear in 4 consecutive Super Bowls, and the team produced 10 Hall of Famers. In addition, Wilson spearheaded many innovations for the league, including the initial discussions of the merger between the AFL and NFL. He was also known as the conscience of the NFL because he always put league matters ahead of his own personal interests. He was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2009, and upon his death in 2014, a foundation was set up to give back $1.2 billion to the communities of Detroit and Buffalo. With the photo of Ralph here, this is his Hall of Fame induction football and a patch the team wore on their jerseys throughout the 2014 season. Built in 1937, the structure at the corner of Best and Jefferson Streets was originally called Roush Memorial Stadium in honor of a former Buffalo mayor. The first game played at the stadium was a college football game between Colgate and Tulane on October 16, 1937. The game was won by Tulane 7-6 in front of over 32,000 fans. The stadium was renamed Civic Stadium in 1938, a moniker it held until 1960, when it was named War Memorial Stadium. The Bills used it as their home field from their inception in 1960 through the 1972 season. It became affectionately known as the Rock Pile. The Bills won their first AFL championship in the hollowed turf of the Rock Pile in 1964. The first ever American Football League game was played on July 30th, 1960. It pitted the Bills against the Boston Patriots at War Memorial Stadium. The Bills lost the game 28-7 in front of 16,474 curious fans. The Bills' first touchdown was scored by Maurice Bassett on a 1-yard plunge in the third quarter. He was cut from the team only a couple of days later. This program shown on the left is the first ever game. This is the program from that first ever game. The Bills also uniquely wore blue and silver in 1960 and 61, brought over by Ralph Wilson from his relationship with the Lions. This jersey shown here was worn by Art Baker. He was a former Syracuse University star, and he wore this jersey with the Bills in 1961. He played with Heisman Trophy winner Ernie Davis and was on Syracuse's only football national championship team in 1959. The Bills' first ever regular season AFL game was against the New York Titans on September 11th, 1960. This is the program from that first game. The Bills lost 27-3, and their only points came on a 35-yard field goal by Darryl Harper in the first quarter, staking the Bills to a 3-0 lead. And it would be the team's only highlight from their opening game. The Bills finished their inaugural season with a 5-8-1 record and a third-place finish in the AFL East Division. This program and this ticket are original from that game, and notice the $4 ticket price for the game. The Bills were the only AFL team to ever play against the Canadian Football League team in a preseason game. There were 6 NFL teams that had played preseason games against the CFL, but the Bills were the only AFL team. And of course, the Bills lost the game 38-21 and became the only team from the AFL or the NFL to lose to a Canadian Football League team. The Bills lost 38-21. The game drew 12,000 people to Civic Stadium in Hamilton in 1961. In the early 1960s, pro football games across the South continued to be played in front of segregated crowds, with whites and blacks sitting in different parts of the stadiums, and usually the blacks sitting in the end zones. The program on the right is from a game played in Mobile, Alabama, between the Bills and the Houston Oilers on October 23rd, 1962. It is the last professional football game in the United States played in front of a segregated crowd. The Bills defeated the reigning AFL champions 21-14 on that historic day. Cookie Gilchrist was signed out of the Canadian Football League in 1962. He played 3 seasons with the Bills and led the AFL in rushing in 2 of those 3 seasons. He was the first AFL running back to ever rush for over 1,000 yards in a single season, of which he did in 1962, while also scoring 13 touchdowns. In his 3 seasons with the team, he amassed over 3,000 yards while scoring 31 touchdowns and helping lead the Bills to their 1964 AFL championship. Buffalo News sports columnist and Hall of Fame writer Larry Felser said that Gilchrist was the best football player that ever played for the Bills. And at the time he said that, it was after O.J. Simpson, Bruce Smith, and Jim Kelly had played for the Bills. Hungarian immigrant and Cornell kicker Pete Gogolak in 1964 revolutionized the game of pro football by becoming the first soccer-style kicker in pro football history. Gogolak had emigrated from Hungary, where he played soccer as a kid. He was drafted by the Bills out of Cornell in the 1964 AFL draft. In his first preseason game with the team in Tampa, Florida, he made a 57-yard field goal, which at the time was a pro football record. He helped the Bills win championships in 64 and 65. He made 19 of 29 field goals in 64 and 28 of 46 in 1965, when making more than 50% of your field goals was considered very good. He led the team in points in both years with 102 points and 115 points. Another revolutionary thing that happened in Pete Gogolak's career is his signing as a free agent by the New York Giants in 1966. That signing ignited the war between the two leagues that ultimately led to the AFL-NFL merger and catapulted pro football to become the #1 spectator sport in America. Star quarterback Jack Kemp, who came to the Bills in 1963 on waivers as San Diego had made a mistake, led the Bills to back-to-back titles in 64 and 65. On the right here is a game-worn white jersey of Kemp's from that time period. He appeared in 6 AFL championship games, 3 with Buffalo and 3 with Los Angeles and San Diego before he came to Buffalo. Kemp was the AFL MVP in 1965. He is only one of 20 players that played all 10 seasons of the American Football League's existence. Interesting to note, there are 3 other Bills players that also achieved a similar feat: punter Paul McGuire, linebacker Harry Jacobs, and quarterback Tom Flores. Kemp later became a congressman from Western New York for 20 years, and he eventually ran as a vice presidential candidate with Bob Dole as the presidential candidate in the 1996 election, only to lose to Bill Clinton and Al Gore. President Barack Obama in 2009 awarded Kemp the Presidential Medal of Freedom for all that he had done in his career. In 1964, as the Bills were battling to win their first AFL Eastern Division championship, they had a pivotal game on December 20th in Foxborough, Massachusetts, or at Fenway Park in Massachusetts. The Bills came into the game with an 11-2 record, and the Patriots were 10-1, and the winner would win the AFL East Division. The Patriots had defeated the Bills earlier that season. Fenway Park was snow-covered, and it was a cold December day. On the first play from scrimmage, Kemp handed the ball to Cookie Gilchrist, who blasted around right end and met Patriots safety Chuck Shanta. He hit Shanta so hard that it knocked Shanta unconscious. Gilchrist got up, stood over the fallen Shanta, looked at the rest of the Patriots defense, and shouted at them, "Which one of you mother is next?" That hit set the tone, and the Bills went on to win the AFL Eastern Division Championship 24-14 behind 286 yards passing from Jack Kemp. Kemp threw 1 touchdown pass and ran for 2 others. On the left, this is the program from that game. The Bills then went on to play the San Diego Chargers at War Memorial Stadium the following week for the AFL Championship. The Bills fell behind early 7-0 behind the running of Keith Lincoln. However, later in the first quarter, on a screen pass, Mike Stratton, shown in this picture, hit Keith Lincoln, breaking his ribs, and the momentum of the game swung on that play, and the Bills went on to win 20-7, capturing their first AFL championship. That hit has become known as the hit heard round the world. On the left here is the ticket stub from that 64 AFL championship game. The Bills repeated in 1965 as AFL champions, defeating the Chargers in a rematch, 23-0. The Bills' defense dominated, holding the Chargers to only 223 yards, and the game swung on a 74-yard punt return by Butch Bird in the second quarter, giving the Bills a 14-0 lead. They added 3 Pete Gogolak field goals to win the game 23-0. The photo on the right shows Ralph Wilson with captains Billy Shaw, number 66, and Tom Sestak, number 70, as they raised the flag on the opening day of the 1966 season, commemorating the Bills' back-to-back AFL championships. If you actually want to see this flag in person, it's at the Buffalo History Museum in the Icons exhibit. The Bills had another good season in 1966, finishing with a 9-4-1 record and their third consecutive AFL Eastern Division title. However, they lost the championship game at War Memorial Stadium 31-7 with a chance to go to Super Bowl I. The game changed at the end of the first half when the Bills driving inside the 20-yard line of the Chiefs, and Kemp threw an interception that Johnny Robinson picked off in the end zone and ran 70 yards, setting up a field goal. And instead of the Bills going in tied at the half, it was 17-7 Kansas City, and the Chiefs never looked back, and the Bills lost the opportunity to go to Super Bowl I. Billy Shaw, shown here on the right, is the only player that played his entire career in the American Football League that is enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The brothers here, these are 2 brothers, Charlie and Tony King, came to Buffalo. Charlie, out of Purdue University, was drafted by the Bills in 1965, and Tony, out of Findlay College, was drafted by the Bills in 66. On November 5th, 1967, Miami played the Bills at War Memorial Stadium, and Charlie and Tony King became the first African-American brothers to play in the same game for the same team in pro football history. On the opening kickoff, Joe Auer of Miami fumbled the ball and Tony King recovered for the Bills. Midway through the second quarter, after a Miami touchdown, Charlie King returned a kickoff 50 yards to midfield, and the 2 brothers had made pro football history by appearing in the same game for the same team. The brothers played 6 more games together that season for the Bills. Though the Bills only won 1 of those 6 games, the brothers made history, and they are honored in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for this milestone. And this is the ticket stub from that historic game. Bob Kelsu, number 61, shown here, came to Buffalo in 1968 after an All-American football career as an offensive tackle for Oklahoma University. Kelsu was drafted by the Bills in the 8th round in 1968. He began his career as a substitute offensive lineman, but quickly asserted himself and became a starting guard opposite of Billy Shaw. The 2 of them led sweeps by Minnie Max Anderson, here number 22, and helped protect quarterback Dan Dara, number 10, throughout the 1968 season. Bob was named the team's Rookie of the Year. He had a very promising football career ahead of him. However, following the 1968 season, as part of his ROTC commitment from college, Bob entered the Army as a 2nd lieutenant. He could have very easily looked to not fulfill the commitment. However, that was not Bob. He arrived in Vietnam in November 1969 as part of the 101st Airborne Division. Kelsu was stationed at Firebase Ripcord in the Oshaw Valley and was involved in the most intense battle in Vietnam in 1970. Bob was committed to help his men to the end and defeat the enemy. So no matter the odds, His life came to a tragic end on July 21st, 1970, by a mortar attack. He's the only active NFL player that was killed in Vietnam. He is honored today on the Bills Wall of Fame. With the AFL-NFL merger that was announced on June 8, 1966, the Bills finally joined the NFL in 1970 and play an interleague schedule for the first time. The Bills' first official game as an NFL franchise was September 20th, 1970, against an old AFL rival at War Memorial Stadium, the Denver Broncos, who at the time were coached by former Bills head coach Lou Saban. The Bills lost 25-10 that day, with O.J. Simpson scoring on a 2-yard run in the first quarter for the Bills' first official NFL points. The following week on September 27th, the Bills played their first former NFL team, the Los Angeles Rams, and were defeated by the Rams at the Rock Pile 19-0. These are ticket stubs from each of those two games. The Bills finished their first NFL season with a 3-10-1 record and a fourth-place finish. The Bills would not defeat their first former NFL team until September 24th, 1972, when they beat the San Francisco 49ers 27-20. The Bills had gone 0-10-1 in their first 11 games, with only a tie against the Baltimore Colts in 1970. When the Bills joined the NFL, they were required, as one of the stipulations of having a team, was to have a stadium with a seating capacity of 50,000 or more. War Memorial Stadium would not fit the bill. After lots of haggling between and amongst many politicians, and with Ralph Wilson, and a project gone bad in Lancaster for a dome stadium, the Bills finally had a new stadium to call home in Orchard Park that opened on August 17, 1973. The stadium was built for $22 million. The opening game was a preseason game versus the Washington Redskins. The opening kickoff was returned by Redskin kick returner Herb Mulkey for a touchdown, as the Redskins went on to win the opening game 37-21. The Bills won the first regular season game ever played at the stadium on September 30th, a 9-7 win over the New York Jets. John Leipold kicked a 42-yard first quarter field goal for the first points scored in the stadium. The stadium also became the first stadium in NFL history to carry the name of a corporate sponsor, Rich Foods. The Bills selected Heisman Trophy winner O.J. Simpson out of the University of Southern California with the first overall pick in the 1968 NFL Draft. Through his first 3 seasons, Simpson was a big disappointment, but had his first good year in 1972 when he rushed for over 1,200 yards. His breakout season came in 1973, and this photo is the opening game of that season, when Simpson broke the NFL single-game rushing record as he rushed for 250 yards against the New England Patriots at Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough. In 1973, O.J. broke the single-season NFL rushing record and became the first running back in NFL history to eclipse 2,000 yards. He carried the ball 332 times with a 6-yard average. He broke the previous record held by Jim Brown by 140 yards. What is more amazing is the second leading ball carrier in the NFL in 1973 was John Brockington. He finished 859 yards behind O.J. Simpson made All-Pro and was NFL MVP. It was the greatest single season for a running back in the history of the NFL. No running back has still rushed for 2,000 yards in only 14 games. And what makes his accomplishment even more amazing is the Bills only passed 213 times that entire season. So everyone in the stadium and on the other team knew O.J. was going to get the ball. He was certainly the greatest running back I've ever seen play. This photo here is of OJ breaking the record versus the New York Jets on December 17th, 1973. The Bills lost 20 consecutive games to the Miami Dolphins throughout the 1970s, never having beat the Fish throughout the entire decade. But the Bills ended that streak on September 7th, 1980, and ended the longest losing streak to a single team in NFL history. The win over the Dolphins that day catapulted the Bills to their first NFL East Division title in 1980. This program, media pass, and ticket are all from that game. Later that season, the Bills beat the Rams and did a chorus line celebration after their 10-7 overtime victory when the fans would not leave the stadium. Later, the Bills won their first AFL East Division title in the talking proud year of 1980 with a win over San Francisco in the rain and fog. And when the Bills returned home, there were over 5,000 fans awaiting them at the airport. The Bills sadly lost in the playoff to San Diego, with the Bills leading 14-13 in the final minutes when Bills safety Bill Simpson fell down and the Chargers scored on a 50-yard touchdown pass to end the Bills' remarkable 1980 season. Shown here to the left of Ralph Wilson is his daughter, Linda Bogdan. Linda, in 1984, told Ralph that he needed help in the scouting department, and she became the first full-time female scout in NFL history. She served 22 years in the Bills scouting department. She was an astute judge of football talent, and her groundbreaking work opened opportunities for many other women to achieve success in various roles in professional football. Her scouting prowess helped the Bills land some notable players, including wide receiver Jerry Butler, Hall of Famers Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed, and 1991 AFC Championship game hero Carlton Bailey. The Bills drafted Jim Kelly with the 14th pick in the first round of the famed quarterback-rich NFL draft of 1983. However, the Bills were unable to sign Kelly, and he played in the United States Football League. With the demise of the USFL 3 years later, the Bills finally got Kelly's signature on a contract on August 18, 1986. He became the richest player in NFL history with his $7.5 million 5-year contract. Over the next 10 years, he led the Bills to 6 division titles, 4 AFC championships, 4 Super Bowl appearances, and the greatest period in Bills history. This poster depicts, quote, Kelly's heroes. Included in the poster are Andre Reed, Fred Smerlas, Kent Hall, and Cornelius Bennett, along with Kelly. So the best trivia question that I know of in Bills history is, when was Jim Kelly's first ever game at Rich Stadium, and who was the opponent? Everyone will answer September 7th, 1986 versus the New York Jets. But the real answer is October 27th, 1979, as a freshman quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes. At the time, the Carrier Dome was being built in Syracuse, so the Orangemen played 2 home games in Rich Stadium. Kelly made his college debut as he played in this game, completing 7 of 17 passes for 137 yards in his first career touchdown in the Hurricanes' 25-15 loss to Syracuse. On the left is the program from that game. November 20th, 1988, the Bills clinched the AFC East Division title with an overtime field goal by Scott Norwood in the 9-6 victory over the Jets. It was the Bills' first division clinching win at home since 1966. The fans stormed the field in celebration. Bills broadcaster Van Miller coined the term fandemonium on his broadcast that day, and this poster commemorates that historic day. If you look closely under the goalpost, there's a guy there with a red baseball hat. That's actually me. The Bickering Bills, as they were known in 1989 because of a feud between Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas, Despite that, they won their second consecutive East Division title and played the Cleveland Browns in a divisional playoff game at Cleveland's Municipal Stadium on January 6th. Most Bills fans remember this game because of a drop touchdown pass by Ronnie Harmon on a perfectly thrown ball from Jim Kelly in the waning seconds. On the next play, Kelly threw an interception, and the Bills lost the game, and their season ended 34-30. But more importantly, that day, the no-huddle offense was born. The Bills trailed throughout the game and went to the no-huddle offense early to catch up. It worked so well that in 1990, the Bills adopted it as their primary offense, spurring them to 4 consecutive AFC championships. In 1990, the Bills won their 3rd straight East Division title. They defeated the Dolphins 44-34 in the divisional playoffs and hosted the Los Angeles Raiders in the AFC Championship game on January 20th, 1991. The program on the left is from that game. The Bills played the greatest AFC Championship game in history, jumping to a 41-3 halftime lead on their way to a 51-3 AFC Championship. It's the most lopsided victory in AFC Championship game history. Of course, the Bills lost one of the most memorable Super Bowls in history, 20-19. But the next day, a welcome home celebration at City Hall in front of over 30,000 fans honored the team. The Bills in 1991, repeated as AFC East Division champions, routed the Chiefs in the first playoff game, and the AFC Championship game, depicted on the program on the right, was billed as a duel between Kelly and Denver quarterback John Elway. However, the game turned into a defensive struggle, and the Bills' only touchdown came on an interception return by Carlton Bailey. The Bills won their second consecutive AFC Championship with that hard-fought 10-7 victory. Of course, to go to the championship games that they went to, there were some superstar players the Bills had. Bruce Smith, the first overall pick in the 1985 NFL draft. He was too fast and too strong, and Smith forced opposing offenses to change the way they played. Despite almost always being double teamed, he holds the career record for NFL sacks with 200, and he was also a great defensive player against the run. He's considered one of the 2 or 3 greatest defensive ends in NFL history and was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2009. Cornelius Bennett came to Buffalo in 1987 in a 3-team blockbuster trade engineered by Bill Polian. He was the second pick in the NFL draft in 1987 by the Colts, but he did not want to play for the team. He came to Buffalo and became a perennial Pro Bowl player, making the Pro Bowl 5 times, and named to the NFL's all-decade team of the 1990s. He wreaked havoc from his linebacker position opposite Bruce Smith. Thurman Thomas here on the left, of course, was overlooked in the NFL draft and wasn't taken until the 40th selection. He carried a chip on his shoulder throughout his NFL career. He became the best dual threat running back throughout his era, amassing over 12,000 rushing yards and catching 472 passes. Thurman was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2007, and he and Andre Reed hold the touchdown record for the Bills with 87. And of course, on the right is Andre Reed, a 4th-round draft pick in 1985 out of Kutztown State. As soon as Kelly came to Buffalo, Reed became his go-to receiver. And of course, Reed holds all of the Bills' records for career receptions, career yards, and career touchdowns. And he was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2014. The Bills, of course, won 2 other AFC championships in 1992, even though they failed to win the East Division. They won the greatest comeback in NFL history over the Houston Oilers, 41-38, coming back from a 35-3 deficit. The following week, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-3, and then defeated Dan Marino and the Dolphins 29-10 to win their 3rd consecutive AFC championship. And then they won an unprecedented 4th consecutive, defeating the Kansas City Chiefs and Joe Montana 30-13 behind 186 yards rushing from Thurman Thomas. And these are programs from those two games. And then this is one of my favorite photos of being in the stadium. This was near the end of the game after the Bills were going to win their fourth consecutive championship. And nobody wanted the Bills going back to the Super Bowl except Bills fans. And this was an appropriate sign. With the dawn of the 1998 season, Bills fans were preoccupied with the team's demand that they sell $11 million worth of club seats to extend the stadium lease, or the team would likely move. Thankfully, Flutie Mania came to the rescue. CFL star Doug Flutie was signed by the Bills in the offseason to back up quarterback Rob Johnson. But Flutie replaced Johnson after a series of injuries and led the Bills to 9 wins in 12 games to qualify for the wild card playoff. But more importantly, his daring and entertaining play catapulted Bills fans to purchase club seats and exceed the $11 million goal, ensuring the Bills would stay in Buffalo. Flutie also created a special bond with wide receiver Eric Moulds, and Moulds had a breakout year with 67 catches and a team record 1,368 receiving yards while averaging over 20 yards per reception. And of course, with Flutie Mania came Flutie Flakes, a cereal that was born in 1998 and has sold over 2 million boxes. In all, 7 different varieties of Flutie Flakes boxes have been created, including a French-Canadian version. Van Miller, as depicted here in a 1960 Buffalo newspaper, was the original voice of the Bills and became the longest tenured team broadcaster in NFL history after serving in that capacity for 37 years. His narration captured many of the Bills' greatest moments, including the AFL championships of the mid-60s and the Super Bowl years of the 90s. He was also known for his unique wardrobe and was often seen wearing a full-length fur coat, as depicted here. After his retirement, he was presented the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award by the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2004. As we all know, the Bills had a lengthy playoff drought from 2000 to 2017. But one of the highlights of the drought was the signing of mercurial star Terrell Owens in 2009. The Bills thought they were close to being a playoff team, and they thought that Owens could put them over the top, but he was not able to, though it was not really his fault, as he had a respectable year with 55 catches for 829 yards and 5 touchdowns, including this one in the snow against the Colts. He brought national exposure to Buffalo through his reality TV show and his national celebrity. Another highlight of the drought was the play of Fred Jackson. Jackson, an undrafted free agent who was always underestimated, played hard, and his blue-collar style fit well with Bills fans, as he was among the fans' most popular players during his tenure. But he also produced. He's the 3rd leading rusher in Bills history, behind only Thurman Thomas and O.J. Simpson. This is a game-worn helmet of Fred's from 2011. Another highlight of the drought years were Bills fans making many trips to Canton, Ohio, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame to see many former Bills stars enshrined with the greats of the game, including Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, James Lofton, Joe DeLamielleure, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, Ralph Wilson, Andre Reed, and general manager Bill Polian. The Bills finally ended the drought in 2017, and those of us who attended the game will always remember the Snovertime game versus the Colts, with the Bills winning in overtime 13-7 on LaShawn McCoy's 21-yard run. And then on New Year's Eve, watching Andy Dalton throw an unlikely touchdown pass to Tyler Boyd, giving the Bills a playoff berth in McDermott's first year. And now here we are, only a few years later, on the verge of our 3rd playoff appearance in 4 years. And 2020 is certainly an exciting year for the Bills, and lots of history to be written yet, and hopefully a Super Bowl appearance in Tampa. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Doug. Can't hear you.
Unmute myself, that would work better. Again, thank you, Greg. We'll go ahead and take some questions and answers for Greg now for the next few minutes before we wrap things up here. We've got one already from Phil, was asking, you mentioned at the beginning, the impending appearance in the playoffs and all of that, but he's asking, what do the Bills actually have to do, or what has to happen for them to actually clinch the division this year?
Well, the easiest thing is if the Bills beat Pittsburgh on Sunday and then beat Denver the following week, they're AFC Eastern Division champions. And they could actually clinch a playoff berth this weekend with New England losing last night if Kansas City beats Miami and Indianapolis beats Las Vegas and the Browns beat Baltimore and we win, we have a playoff spot by Monday night.
That's a complicated equation.
Yes.
Okay. One of our other questions is somebody wants to know, what is the most memorable item of your collection? I know what my personal favorite is, but we'll hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, the answer is probably multiple fold. The thing that I love most about the collection is that until 2020, the collection has every program from every Bills game ever played. But of course, that's not a single object, but that's the favorite, for me, the favorite part of the collection, because it represents the entire history of the team. If you went to a single object, it would be a toss-up between the Art Baker jersey, being the silver and blue jersey, or when Jack Kemp was running for vice president during the campaign of 1996, the Secret Service that guarded him wore lapel pins. And those lapel pins are Bill's standing buffalo helmets. And so those are a very unique item, and I got them directly from one of the Secret Service that guarded him during the presidential campaign.
Our thoughts overlap. That was what I was thinking of too.
And they are featured in the book. Really, both of them are featured in the book.
They're very, very cool. Someone else is asking, the original quarterback rivalry, Kemp versus LaMonica, both pro-quality quarterbacks. How did the Bills end up there?
Well, yeah. Well, they ended up well early from the point of view of Kemp led them to 3, championship games. However, the trade of LaMonica to the Raiders is probably the worst trade in Bills history, because of course LaMonica then went on to have, a great career with the Raiders, leading them to Super Bowl II. So certainly, if the Bills had to do it over again, they would have kept LaMonica and probably traded Kemp. Because after the 66 season, Kemp's performance certainly deteriorated, partly due to injury, but it certainly deteriorated, and LaMonica went on to have some great years with the Raiders.
Deal. I remember reading about Darrell Way in my early years, in my greatest quarterbacks of NFL history and all that sort of thing. So these are some familiar names for me again.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any other questions? We had a couple that didn't have any questions, but said they enjoyed the program. So thank you for that. We're glad you joined us. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, tell you what, we will go ahead and wrap things up here. But before we do, I know you've all been looking at this screen during the Q&A session, but I just wanted to mention again, as I did at the top of the program, that Greg is the author of Makers, Moments, and Memorabilia, a chronicle of Buffalo professional sports, that both Western New York Heritage and the Buffalo History Museum published in collaboration last year. So if you enjoyed the stories and the images that Greg shared today, you want to take a closer look at them, there's a lot more where that came from. in this one-of-a-kind publication. It's really filled with great stories, trivia, fantastic illustrations, most of which you won't find anywhere else. So it's also not just a Buffalo Bills book. It does cover the full array of Buffalo professional sports teams, past and present. So there's some really great and lesser-known teams in there, and Greg's done an absolutely fabulous job of making it, I think, a very interesting and engaging story. So the book makes a great holiday gift, or a gift to yourself for that matter. So we are offering, as I mentioned earlier, special discount for today's attendees, as you can see. So you can either go to our website at wnyheritage.org, or call our office at the number you see listed and use the promo code SPORT20, and you'll get a 20% discount off of the cover price. I should also mention that thanks to the support of Independent Health, New Era, NTT Data, and the Baird Foundation, all proceeds from the sale of this publication go directly back into Western New York Heritage and the Buffalo History Museum, so they can continue to fulfill their missions in the community. So you get a great book, and you get to support two nonprofit organizations at the same time. So it's really a win-win situation. And we'll hope that folks will consider taking advantage of that offer. It really is a beautiful book, if we do say so ourselves. And I think you'll really enjoy it if you're interested in this topic. So with that, I want to thank my friend and colleague, Greg Tranter, for taking the time to share these memorable stories of Bill's history with us. I learn a little bit every time I hear Greg talk. I never get tired of it. It's great stuff. If it was Bear stuff, it'd be better, but this is good. And I also want to thank all of you for taking time out of your Friday lunch hour to join us. As I mentioned at the top of the program, this session has been recorded, so we'll be emailing everyone a link to that recording. And then the posting will also be up on our website at wnyheritage.org. So again, thank you for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a safe and enjoyable weekend. Go Bills.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everybody, for attending.